So, Happy New Year to everybody. In this video, we are going to be talking about migrating from Windows 10 to Linux. Now, you may be asking yourself the question, Anthony, why do you want to move from Windows 10 to Linux? And the answer, amongst other reasons, is that support for Windows 10 in terms of free updates is due to expire in October 2025. If you want to continue using Windows 10 after that date, you will not be supported unless you have paid for security updates. So in this video, you can see I've got Linux installed already, but we are going to go through the process of trying Linux out, installing it on our hard disk, and we're going to be seeing what works and what doesn't, and asking the question whether Linux is a viable alternative to upgrading to Windows 11. So we will be starting our adventure here in Windows 10. After all, this is the operating system which you are most likely running before you are considering migrating across to Linux. So what you need to do is download a Linux distribution. Now, Linux is not like Windows 10. There isn't a single Linux operating system. There are different organizations producing a Linux operating system. Popular ones you might hear of are Linux Mint and Ubuntu. Now within Ubuntu, there are further distributions. These are made by independent teams, but they are officially supported by the Ubuntu group. So in this instance, I had a look at a YouTube video which was reviewing all the different Ubuntu flavors, and I settled on Ubuntu Budgie, and I quite like the operating desktop environment which this came with. So in this instance, what we can do is download the version of Ubuntu which we want. So as you can see, we've got a regular release and we've got a long-term support release here. We have downloaded the regular release, so we just click on download. It's downloading here. So I have already downloaded this. So in this instance, what we are left with is an ISO file. And this is about 3.3 gigabytes on your machine. So what do we need to do with this ISO file? We need to put it on a memory stick. And by putting it on a memory stick, I do not mean copying it and pasting it. I mean we need to actually flash the memory stick with this ISO file. So 3.3 gigabytes is quite a small file. Let's go on to, I've plugged the memory stick in already. You can see here we've got about 3 different volumes on this memory stick, and Windows does not recognize any of it. So how do we flash this ISO file on the memory stick? Well, for that we need a particular tool. We've got this tool, it's called a Balena Etcher. You can download Balena Etcher and then you can run it. So if we go here and then we run Balena Etcher, it's quite straightforward. You choose your file. So in this instance, Ubuntu Budgie ISO. You select your target. In this case, we've got 2 USB devices, one of which is very small indeed. The other one is my actual memory stick, 16 gigabytes. So we select that one. And all we have to do is press that button, which I'm not going to do because I've already done it. So at this stage, you're about 5 minutes into doing this stuff. You've got the Linux operating system installed on your memory stick. So what we're going to do now is we're going to reboot the computer and boot up the memory stick. So now we will reboot the Windows 10. So we'll just hit restart. And what we want to do is get into the BIOS or UEFI. Let's just restart those. So at this stage, I will be mashing the delete key. And we are in. So as you can see, we've got several USB boot options. We want to make sure that the integral splash blue is the highest boot priority, which it is. Sometimes you have to set that. So that is all very good indeed. So now we will close it. You have not made any changes to the BIOS settings, so we'll just click on yes. And here is our first hint that things are looking good. So we can try or install Ubuntu Budgie. And what we can do is boot directly from the memory stick. And here we are. So the first thing it will ask you is, it will take you through some very basic steps. So we want English as the language, we want a British keyboard, we want to connect to the internet, and then we've got two options. You can either install Ubuntu Budgie. We're not going to do that, we just want to try it out. So we'll just click on Try Ubuntu Budgie, and here we are. And I'll take a step back. Here we are. So what do we have? Well, we have got a launcher at the bottom, like so, and we've also got a panel up at the top. And one of the things I'll just simply start off with by doing is just simply launching Firefox. The great thing about trying Ubuntu Budgie before you do anything is that it doesn't change anything on your computer whatsoever. But I'm not going to do a comprehensive review of Firefox. We just want to do the very basics, check out YouTube, for example, and see whether things are actually working okay. So if we just accept that, try searching, we'll just search for our name. And of course, the first thing you want to do is see whether the videos are actually working. And indeed, we can see that they are working indeed. So I'm very satisfied with that. One other thing that's worth having a look at, if we go into the file manager, let's go onto here. We've got various file systems. I'll just expand this a little bit. And one of the things you can see is that there is a 941 gigabyte volume. We'll double click on this. No, maybe the 1.1 terabyte volume. Here we go. What does this look like? This is your Windows 10 partition. Now, the interesting thing about Windows 10 is that it is password protected. I've got a user account which has a password protection on it. And you can see we've got these little padlock icons here. So we can go into here, despite the padlock icon, and we can actually browse our own documents. So I can go all the way through to pictures, wherever my pictures are. Let's see if we go to pictures there. And you can double click on these things here. So this is February 2014, and you can see I've got pictures. You can read them, and you can probably copy them onto your Linux machine. So it's very useful as well to have Ubuntu Budgie as a recovery tool in case, for whatever reason, your Windows file system has become corrupted and it won't boot. So all told, very interesting. I'll just show you a couple of other things. This is your top left corner. You've got alphabetical order here, which apparently is the way Windows 11 does things. But you've also got a classic way of doing things where you've got categories. In this instance, we want to have a look at System Tools. We want to have a look at the App Center. And we have got different apps that you can search for. So one of the things you can look for is OpenShot. For example, no, not OpenShot. What's it called? OBS Studio. That's the one. We've got OBS Studio here. Great. That is one of the things I use a lot of when it comes to desktop video screenshots. What else do we want to have a look at? Well, one of the critical things we're looking at is whether games can work. So what else do we have? You've got Steam, so we can install Steam. And we're going to look at that in a little bit of detail and find out what works and what doesn't. But in the meantime, we're going to reboot and we are going to go back into Windows 10. So now that we've seen the very basics of Linux Budgie, I think we are confident enough to want to install Linux on our hard disk. Now, we've already got Windows 10 installed and we do not want to remove Windows 10. So the question is going to be, what do we need to do in order to prepare our computer for Windows 10? Now, as I have said in many work-related videos, which I also do, one of the very basics of computing is to do your ABCs. What are your ABCs? Always backup computer. So you need to have, as a very basics, you need 3 copies. This is your 3-2-1 rule. 3 copies of your computer work in 2 different forms, one of which should be off-site. So in my example, I've got 2 portable hard drives. One of those hard drives is at my parents' house down in the south of England. So if my house was to burn down completely, I've still got a backup drive. And I also have a second form of backup, which is an onboard hard disk, which is a separate physical disk on my computer. So I want to just touch upon backup tools for a moment. So my preferred backup tool is Paragon Backup and Recovery. This is version 14, which is quite an old version. Here we are. What you can do is you can choose each hard disk that you want to back up. So what I tend to do is back up hard disk 1, which has got your C drive and it's got plenty of other partitions in here. What do? We right click, we select here and we back up to virtual drive, and then we can click on next. You want to specify hard disk 1 as your backup object. So then we click on next here, and then we want a backup location. So in this instance, I've got I've got a folder structure within here, so we can create a brand new backup folder location. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole process because there are many other backup tools available. My point is that you should make a backup before carrying on and proceeding with the next stages. This does take quite a few hours with my system. It takes about 2.5 hours to back up to an onboard hard disk, but to copy that onboard hard disk to my USB hard disk, that can take about 6 to 7 hours, depending on how fast the transfer speed is. So it's not something I do particularly often, but at critical junctures such as this, this is what I tend to do. Now, have I restored from a backup image? Yes, I have. I upgraded from a spinning hard disk to an M.2 hard disk about 4 years ago, and I used this tool in order to transfer the image, and it worked very well indeed. What we want to do is go to this PC, right click, and then we want to manage, which is right here. Computer management. We've got disk management here. And we've got the C drive here. I've done this process before, but I'll just demonstrate it with disk 0. This is your E drive. We want to shrink the volume. And in this instance, you can select shrink. It will query the volume for available shrink space. This didn't take very long with the M.2 drive, but this is a spinning disk, my backup drive. So you can see the total size of the partition is 1.9 terabytes, and the available space for shrinking it is about 600 gigs. So we can enter 560 gigabytes here, like so, and we can shrink it. And all we have to do is click on shrink, and it takes about 30 seconds. And afterwards, you are left with a much smaller C drive, which is what I've done in this instance. Now, we're going to be talking about the installation of the Linux partition. This is part of Windows. This is an EFI system partition. This is a recovery partition. I'm not too sure what EFI stands for, but what we're now going to do is talk about this space here. This is unallocated space when I did it previously. So what we'll do is go through the basic procedure for installing this. And here we are back at the same menu. So we'll just click on English, click on English keyboard, wired connection. This is the bit where we want to install Ubuntu Budgie. So we click on next and we want an interactive installation. I would not recommend automated installations simply because we want to have two operating systems. We want to have Windows 10 and also Ubuntu. So we want the desktop version, and this is fully featured, so we'll click on next. We want to install third-party software for graphics and Wi-Fi, download and install additional media formats, which includes MP3, MP4, and so on. Click on next. And I've been advised to use manual installation. So in this instance, I select manual. I don't know why this hasn't been advised previously, but the procedure I've seen online suggests manual installation. We'll take you through that. Now, in here, we have got NVMe. So this is my M.2 drive, that's 2 terabytes. You can see we've already got NTFS, this is 1 terabyte. And we have got VFAT, that's your boot manager. And then we have got probably your recovery partition. Anything which is unallocated is called free space. And what you can do with free space is you can add a partition. So in this instance, you just click on the plus, and then you can call that whatever mount point you want. I've done this already before, so I'll just cancel that and take you through what these are. So the first partition we created was the boot mount point. This is 500 gigabytes, and it was /boot. 500 megabytes even. The next one was a swap partition. So you just leave it as swap. It doesn't have a mount point. I selected 2 gigabytes as my option here. And I don't want to use swap files or swap partitions. And the reason is because I've got 32 gigabytes of RAM. If you're using a swap file, then you've run out of memory, and I shouldn't run out of memory. So it should just be used very sparingly in this particular example. The main partition is this one. It's 941 gigabytes. If I go to here, click on change, that was ext4, and it was the root partition, which is /. Once I had done all of that, I clicked on next. We then had user accounts to set up. So I typed in my name, Anthony Dyer, and then I entered my password and so on. So there wasn't too much beyond here that was needing to be created. But once we had created everything and installed it, it was all very successful. What we then needed to do was reboot the machine. So in this instance, I will just cancel all of this. We've still got this memory stick version of Ubuntu Budgie. We'll just click on close there and we will reboot. So in theory, we should have a dual boot system, but do we? Let's click on this and let's click on restart. Now, if it works, then what we will have is a boot menu. It's called grub. I'm not too sure what grub stands for, but it's just a text-based menu operation. And as you can see, it's booting into Windows 10 without a menu. So you may be asking yourself the question, well, what's going on, Anthony? Why am I not booting into Linux in this instance? So what we're going to do is go back into the BIOS, because that's where all your answers lie. So we just reboot. And now just mash that delete key. And here we are. So what we want to do is go to settings. We want to go to boot. and we want to go to hard disk partitions. What you can see is that we've got two boot options, Windows Boot Manager, and the other one is Ubuntu. So what we want to do is select Windows Boot Manager as boot option number 2. Close that, click on yes, and here we are. This is the grub menu. So at the top of the menu option, we've got Ubuntu, and we've also got Windows Boot Manager. So you want to be asking yourself, can we actually boot into Windows 10? That is, after all, the last good operating system. So click on enter here. And yes, it's booting. So this is very good. And that is absolutely fine. And you don't need to see what is in here. I can assure you it is all very much as expected. So we'll restart this one more time. And we're back in the menu. So in this instance, by default, it will have Ubuntu as the option that will be selected if you don't select anything for a certain length of time. So we'll just boot up Ubuntu. And this is pre-configured. My password is off to the right on the monitor number 3. So I'll just type in my password here. And here we are. So in this instance, I'll just click on send for that particular example. So one of the things you want to do is set up the basics. So in this instance, I've got 3 screens. They were set up very quickly indeed. Went to System Tools, and then we go to Budgie Control Center, and then you can select your screens. Let's go to Screen Display here. And then you can move your screens about as you see fit. In this instance, we've got screen 1, 2, and 3. You can't select a button called Identify and identify your two identically sized screens, for example, and see a number. So it's some things don't quite work the same as Windows 10, but it's pretty good. If we go to the Media Center, the display, you can see here we've got a configuration 5.1 output. You can test things. I found the front center didn't work previously, and I thought it was a driver problem with the subwoofer and front center being swapped around. Wasn't anything like that at all. It was just a loose wire, unfortunately. So you can test things quite happily, and it's a nice interface. Now, one of the things you want to do, of course, is add new programs. I've been busy adding programs here. If you go on to, let's say, for example, App Center, you can drag that down to here and just add it onto the end. No, just like that. Yes, like that. You can also add it to the desktop. So that's fairly predictable. It's got a similar kind of look to what Windows 10 has. Some people would say this is very Apple-y in terms of its style. But going to the App Center, we want to install programs. And what do you see here? We've got our first problem. This is where the thin veneer of this program starts to unravel. Unable to create a GL context. And when you go onto Firefox and you type in Ubuntu App Center, unable to create a GL context, plenty of situations which are related but not quite similar. And what you find is that we've got an Nvidia graphics driver running this instead of a generic graphics driver. So we need to go to an older graphics driver according to some suggestions. And this is where things unravel even further. So what do? We click on additional drivers. And we will be sitting here for about 5 minutes before it comes up with a list of graphics drivers. Now that took about 2 minutes. And what you can see here is that we've got Nvidia driver 560, which is what we're doing. That's almost the latest version. If you go to the Nvidia website, I think 565 is the latest one. You can see 565 down here. Now, I selected 535, and I think it was the open kernel. So if we go down to here, it was either this one. I think it was either this one or this one. So I selected that and then I applied changes. And when I rebooted, I was met with a blank screen, a completely black screen. And you can imagine the panic stations which I had. And it goes to demonstrate that it's not a completely polished operating system. There are things which don't quite work. The try it option with the memory stick just works. Why does it just work? It works because of this display driver here. This is a generic display driver. Now if I apply changes here, now we have Revert. Now we've gone to the generic display driver. So now we can restart the system. And you find more bugs. So this restart button doesn't work at all, which is a bit annoying, but it's not a disaster. So we go up here and we hit the reboot button and then we go to restart. So after about 20 minutes of playing and not finding any answers on Firefox, the leftmost display is the only display that works. The middle display looks like that, and the rightmost display is completely blank, except for the mouse cursor, like so. So what we want to do with the default graphics driver is install more apps. And one of the things we will do is go onto the App Center. As you can see, it works perfectly well with the default graphics driver. Now there's plenty of apps to install, one of which is Shotcut. That's my video editor of choice. I know there's a video graphics editor called Kdenlive, which I've never tried before. I like using Shotcut. It's reasonably fast. I've used it for about 2 years now. And it's previously I used OpenShot and that was very slow. But Shotcut very much works on this system. OBS Studio, let's have a look at that. OBS Studio is working, and I have tested this. A few issues with my microphone. Now GIMP, if we go onto this, now it installs, but it does not launch. So then the question is, what other ways are there of installing programs which don't behave correctly? Well, if we go onto GIMP, go to image manipulation program, we want to go to download, and we want to install GIMP Flatpak. Now, I did not have Flatpak installed, but you can install Flatpak using this command in the command center. And once you have done that, then you can download and install the GIMP Flatpak. So that's one way we can do things. I also found trouble with Audacity that did not install correctly, and I found that I didn't have any microphones, but now I do. And if I go on to, where is it? Sound and video. If we go to Audacity up here, it's right here. It looks a little bit different to the Windows version. It also looks a little bit different to the version which was installed with the App Center. But if we go on to audio setup and we look at recording device, this is not what you'd be presented with in Windows 10. You've got a lot of inputs here which are not actually inputs, but what we do have is a blue microphone's USB. And if we test this, hello, testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, nothing works. So as we can see, we need to set things up a little bit. So if we go to Blue microphones USB, one of the things I do find with Blue microphones is that I have to unplug them and then plug them in again. And I've also found that with Windows 10, so this is not a unique Linux problem. So let's try this one more time. Options, what have we got here? Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Looks like it's recording. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Very good. So that works very well, but I don't like this way of showing input options. So just at the point where I thought I could just simply revert back to Nvidia driver 560, I'm finding it's stuck on continue to use manually installed driver. So none of these are selectable. So therefore, what we are going to now do is show some tricks on how to revert back to the default Ubuntu installed options. What we're going to do is just reboot the computer. Okay, so what I'm going to do is boot in with advanced options. So we're going to go and have a look at the recovery mode. And what we're going to do is we will enable networking. So I click on networking. That's now done. So now we'll go into the root shell, press enter for maintenance, and we will do Ubuntu drivers auto install. This will take some time. So that is that. So now we're going to type in the next command, Nvidia-SMI. You can press the up button to go through historical commands that you've entered. Let's see what we've got here. Nvidia-SMI, Nvidia driver version 560. Excellent. So now we can do sudo reboot, and we should hopefully be back in the game. One thing you need to do is enable the network. That's really important. If you auto install drivers without enabling the network, it can't fetch anything at all. Let's log into Ubuntu. So as we can see, we are using the Nvidia driver 560. That is as expected, but what is not as expected is that when we run OBS Studio, it says fail to initialize video. Your GPU may not be supported. This is not very good. I've tested this before and it worked. Now what I'm going to do is launch Steam. This did work before. I absolutely know it did. Let's see what it says here. Because I did get an error message previously. And if we just move this back here, yeah, that works absolutely fine. So this is working correctly. If I look at my library here, you can see I've got 2 games installed. If I go on to Black Mesa, for example, when I installed this the first time, it worked, but very slowly. And the error message I got when I launched the Steam library was that I did not have 32-bit versions of the graphics drivers. So what we're going to do is I installed those graphics drivers. It gave me very precise command line instructions to use. And once I installed those, it was absolutely fine. So if I just click on Black Mesa here, this takes some time processing Vulkan shaders. Well, it's almost finished processing the Vulkan shaders, and I'm going to have to say that took a ridiculous length of time to do. And let's just see what happens. It should load up very soon now. And here we are. So this looks very encouraging. And here we are. So if we just go to campaign and we just do a new game just to see how the graphics look and whether there's anything particularly bad or good. So as you can see, it's looking really very familiar. It's absolutely, anyone who uses Windows will find that this is a very familiar user interface. So I'll just hit escape and we will just simply quit the game, go back to the Steam platform. City Skylines. I had a lot of issues with getting this working. When I hit the play button, it crashed. It gave me an exit code 134. Again, I've launched it. That seemed to be quicker with the Vulkan shaders, but it crashed when I hit the play button here. Let's see what happens now. So what I do is I just simply play anyway. The way I got round the crash was to delete the launcher. And you can do that. You can just search for launcher in the file manager. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Now, as you can see, it has failed to start. One thing I'll just show is a program. It's called System Monitor. You can press the Windows key to get your start menu up here. Control-Alt-Delete, however, is not a shortcut which works. What do we have here? It looks like you can select any process and just end it here. So it's very similar to Task Manager. Resources, you've got CPU history here, you've got memory history, and you've also got networking history. So very similar to Task Manager, but I do not know any shortcuts for bringing this up. And let's just go back to processes. We're just looking for City Skyline. Oh, there it is, Cities x64. Let's just end that process. See what happens. Absolutely nothing. Oh dear, that's normally end processes is a kill button, and in this instance doesn't do anything. So as you can see, I've now got City Skylines running. And how did I do that? Well, I'm not going to show you the rest of the game. I'll just exit the game and I'll show you how I did it. Although it does look like it's frozen again. So let's go onto the file manager, the equivalent of Windows Explorer. What we can do is we can search, and we can search launcher. And this will search for all instances of launcher within this folder. So you can search folders recursively or not, or you can just search within the folder itself. So then you just click on search. And as you can see, I've moved a whole bunch of files to trash. And what I did was I just deleted any instances of the launcher, and it would just recreate the launcher files when I started it again. Okay, so I've now got OBS Studio installed. So how did I manage to accomplish such a difficult feat? Well, the situation is that if you use the App Store to install OBS Studio, it's not going to work if you use an Nvidia driver. What they are saying is that you need to uninstall the OBS Studio app and you need to install using from their own website. So if we go to Linux here, you can download it on FlatHub. So you click on that, and then you just go to here, you copy this file into your terminal, like so, and then it will download from the servers all of the files and get them installed. Then once you have done that, you can then find under sound and video your OBS Studio. That is how to get OBS Studio running. So I'm very pleased with that. So we've now got Black Mesa game working. We've got the city skyline working somewhat. Now we need to talk about X-Plane. So let's move this to the side. We'll go into xplane.com, and then you can do a free demo, of course. And you can download the free demo. You can get it for Linux. Now I'm not going to download that. I've already done that plenty of times. Show or download. What I want to just do is go into the file system. We talked about downloading the X-Plane file. Let's go into here, and let's go to downloads. And let's go to the installer, which is a zip file. If you double click on this, no applications found. What I found was that you need to bring that outside of the zip file into here, double click, and now this should look very familiar to anybody who has been running X-Plane on Windows. So in this case, you can install the X-Plane 12 demo, which I've done. And if we click here, let's see how it all looks. I'll plug in my, I'm not going to install the latest update, but let's just see what we've got. I'll just use the demo for the time being, and then we'll click on understood. We will resume the last flight. And this should all look very familiar to anybody who has been using X-Plane on Windows. So here we've got X-Plane running, and it's looking very nice. I've got 27 frames per second. I've adjusted the graphics previously to get the best balance between performance and graphics detail, and as you can see, it's looking pretty good. I would say, broadly speaking, the performance is looking very similar to what we have in Windows, but we do have some problems. Is everything 100%? Not quite. Everything's 100% as far as X-Plane is concerned, but let's look at joystick. Let's see what we've got. We can see that my control yoke, the force feedback yoke, it's running perfectly well in dumb mode. There's no force feedback set up at the moment. That's fine. And we have got we've got our pendular rudders here. Now, I'm going to say that is because I have done things which they didn't work previously, and we're going to talk about that in a future video. They were not recognized whatsoever, and I had to do various tricks in order to make them work. What else do we have? We've got a throttle quadrant. I'll just plug it in, and then we'll just see whether it appears. Yes, here we are, CH products, CH throttle quadrant. Have we got the throttle? Yes, we do. We've got the prop and we've got the mixture. So that is very good indeed. So as we've seen, Linux is a bit of a mixed bag, specifically this flavor of Linux. We've had to roll up our sleeves in order to get things working correctly. And the main culprit behind all of this has been the Ubuntu App Store. This is something which is called Snap. It's an installation package manager, And it's very similar to the App Center on Windows. And frankly, you don't have to use it in order to install programs. I've never used the Windows App Center to install programs. I've managed to just simply download the files directly from a website and install it directly. But as we've managed to see, there are other ways of installing programs which you may want to use. But that said, the App Store is required in order to install certain applications. And one of those applications, which I'm really keen on having, is Notepad++. I don't think there are any other ways of installing Notepad++ onto Linux, so I will be using the App Store for that. So overall, is Linux a good pathway to migrate to from Windows 10? I think if you are so minded, yes it is. Now, I do have Linux experience in the past. My very first experience with Linux was in the year 2000 when I was installing and dabbling in Red Hat Linux. But I didn't really commit to it. I committed to the Windows pathway when it came to running things. But more recently, I have been using Raspberry Pis, and of course we've got the Raspberry operating system, which is based on Linux. In fact, it is Linux. So I've had a lot of experience through the Raspberry Pi in terms of getting familiar with a Linux environment. And now I think is the right time to move across to Linux. The options beyond Windows 10 involve Windows 11, realistically speaking, or sticking with Windows 10 or moving across to Linux. And broadly speaking, in terms of my experience with operating systems, I have been on the MS-DOS, including DR-DOS. That's where my personal computing heritage started. And I've worked with Windows NT, I've worked with Windows 3, Windows 3.1, Windows 3.11, Windows 98, Windows XP, Windows 7. But I haven't been working with Windows 2000 or Windows Vista or Windows 95 or Windows 8. And Windows 11, I'm not inclined to go with. And since they're trying to force everybody to upgrade right now, I'm inclined to go the other way. I'm inclined to go the Linux route. Now, in my next video, I want to talk about X-Plane on Linux. As we've seen, it works. Out of the box, it works without any problems whatsoever. But what I want to do in my next video is look at how add-ons for X-Plane work. And in particular, I want to see whether the force feedback program, which is used, this is CLS2Sim, that comes with this, that's a Windows only program. I want to see whether the Wine emulator can be used to get that to work successfully in Linux. I want to get another add-on application called Xenviro to work in Linux. That is again a Windows only application, and I'll be very keen to see how well it works in Linux. I want to see world traffic working in Linux. I want to see a couple of add-on aircraft also work in Linux as well. So that's it for this video. So in the meantime, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you again very soon.